Have you set your goals for 2020 yet? Have you maybe even written them down on a piece of paper? Why are you even setting goals? I'm here with Erik Bergman, a serial entrepreneur, a good friend of mine, the founder of Great.com, a company that will give away 100% of its profits to charity, and a person that have made over 50 million euros in the affiliation space before turning 30. Erik, how are you today?
I'm very well, thank you very much. I'm feeling calm and centered and excited about talking about goals. And I'm here with Emil, my good old friend, a personal development junkie who wants to come up with systems and understand systems for everything, which makes it really interesting to discuss goals with him. And he is the host of this podcast, and he was also the first person joining me into the project of Great. So I'm really excited.
I am excited you are excited. And together we are doing the Becoming Great podcast, a podcast which purpose is to give inspiration, help and tips to anyone who wants to make the world a better place somehow through entrepreneurship. And in this podcast, we're doing different kinds of episodes, 4 different kinds. One type of episode that we're doing is about our organization, Great.com. One type of episode we're doing are personal development episodes like this one. And we will talk about life hacks and anything that would help you through your business. One type of episodes are business episodes where we talk purely about entrepreneurship and business. And finally, the last pillar is episodes about Erik Bergman and his, that's right, that's him, and his journey towards becoming, adding another super to the word super entrepreneur. Super?
Yeah, I'll go with super duper entrepreneur, but that's just because I'm humble. So I'm even inventing words for it.
Duper after the super. Creativity, that is what gets you there.
Yeah, that's why I'm me, you know. I'm just super duper me.
Erik, why did we feel like doing an episode about goal setting?
Okay, so we were supposed to sit down and plan our goals for 2020. And we started discussing this. And after a while, we started questioning if we even wanted goals. If goals were something that's even good or if it's bad. And after sketching up this episode, we constantly found ourselves saying, oh no, don't tell me that now. Say that in the podcast instead. I want to be curious about your perspective. And after I was like, okay, why don't we just turn on the microphones right now instead of planning this episode and see where this conversation takes us. So we actually have no idea what we're going to talk about. Well, at least not what we're going to say, but instead just explore, is goals a good or bad thing? What goals do we have or not have for 2020? And what goals have we had in the past? And when has it helped us and when has it not?
One topic I find very interesting that we started to scratch the surface on is how much do you want to set goals and then really follow them strictly versus how much do you want to follow your inspiration, your excitement? What is your perspective on that, Erik? How much is goals versus inspiration in the way you run your life?
I like that question. I think it's really easy to get stuck on a goal. So one of the questions you asked in the intro was, why are we setting goals? And to me, that is because we want to get to a certain place or reach a certain target, whatever. But it's often that we don't necessarily think it all through. Why do we want to get to that specific thing? What does that mean? And what is that? One thing that comes to mind was in 2015, maybe, I set the goal for myself that I wanted to work out every day for a year. And looking back at this, the reason why I wanted to do that was that A, I wanted to look really good. And B, I wanted to be able to say to people that I had worked out every day for a year. And halfway through this year, I was having nightmares of forgetting to work out because I'd pushed myself so hard up until now that if I would miss one day, everything would be lost. I wouldn't be able to tell people about this. And I could wake up sweaty because I dreamed that I had forgotten to work out, which just shows me how off that goal was for inspiration. It wasn't a goal driven by this is something I really want to do. It's really important for me or my soul. It was just important for my ego in a sense. And I ended up reaching this goal after a year, and then I hated to work out. So I basically didn't work out for 2 years after this because I had abused my own body by working out when I really, really didn't want to in ways I just really didn't want to do. So I set a goal without really thinking, why do I care about this? Why is this important? And what does this really mean? And then I kind of tricked myself, pushed myself so hard to reach this goal for no real good reason. And I gave it all. And I didn't even think about inspiration or creativity. I didn't follow at all. What do I want today? What does my body want? What is my body telling me? And I can just see how that's, at least for me, one of the big risks of setting a goal that is not really thought through and where I'm completely losing out on inspiration and creativity and just feeling into what do I want.
So, and at the same time, I guess after that year, there was some sense of accomplishment and proudness.
Definitely. There was a feeling of accomplishment and proudness. And just looking at it from now, from the lens of 4 years later, or whatever it is, 3 years later, I feel there was definitely benefits from it. There was accomplishment, there was proudness. But when I look at the price that I paid for it, in terms of not working out for 2 years afterwards, feeling stressed that entire year that I would miss a training session, feeling I really hated to work out sometimes. I just went out running in the rain when it was cold, even though I really, really didn't want to, simply because I wanted to reach a goal. And when I look at the pros and the cons, I believe that I paid a much higher price than it was worth at the end of the day.
So is there a way you could have set that goal in a more healthy way? So for example, if your goal was to do, let's simplify it and say that your goal was to do 100 push-ups every day. Could you have set a lower goal for the days where you felt off? Like I have to do minimum of 10 push-ups each day. And that made it bearable even though you weren't on your best.
If I were to set the same kind of goal today, I would set the goal in a way where my goal would be, how can I love working out when this year is over? Rather than set a specific number of a specific thing. So
I really like that.
So the goal is to come up with a way to love to work out. Because that means to find a habit that I enjoy. So if I would have set the goal instead, okay, at the moment, I don't enjoy working out. So I need to push myself through a goal to start working out. But if the goal would be, okay, I want to love working out after a year, what could I do then? Okay, I'm going to write down a list with 30 different ways of working out. And this year, I'm going to try them all when I'm in a good mood for it or whatever. I'm not going to push myself to do it if I'm suffering, but I'm going to try these 30 things. I'm going to give them a serious try, at least do each and every one of them, let's say for 3 hours, to really know, do I enjoy motocross? Do I enjoy swimming? Do I enjoy running? Do I enjoy football? Do I enjoy climbing? Whatever it might be. And the goal would be, how can I find something I feel passionately about?
I feel like this is a very important concept here. To have the goal to not needing a goal. Because if you really like something, you don't need, right? If you really like something, you don't need to have those outer rules imposed on you. And I think that is very key, because when we do something we enjoy, we don't need to use any willpower. It just comes natural. And I believe that every person has different amounts of willpower, of course, but everyone has X units of willpower. And when those are out, we are not going to perform anymore and going to make shitty decisions. So if you are maybe listening to this as a young, busy entrepreneur, if you have to spend a ton of willpower on your exercise routine, then that is willpower that is not available in your business to do really hard things there.
Yeah. So what else could this be applied to then? What goals do you have for yourself in 2020?
I like where we're going here. So I'm going to switch the question back to you, because we talked previously about that your goal on Instagram, and you said your goal on Instagram is 400,000 followers. And then we said, well, I can't fully control if I'm going to get 400,000 followers. So instead I said, my goal is to post 365 short videos, 365 quotes, and 365 valuable posts. So maybe the goal you should have could be, how can I find a way to enjoy making this amount of posts?
Yeah. So to sum that up a little bit, my first goal was, and that came out of nowhere. So once again, I think I can see this is definitely a danger with me. This is how I got the I'm going to work out for 365 days in a row goal. It was just an idea that I grabbed out of thin air. Then I started saying, I'm going to do this. And then I felt that, okay, now I've identified my ego with this, so I'm going to do it. And the same thing happened with Instagram. I had 4,000 followers in October. And I told myself, hey, I'm going to 100-fold this in 1 year. I'm going to have 400,000 followers by October. Why 400,000, you may ask? It just was a good number out of nowhere. How am I going to feel when I reach that goal? I have no idea. So that's one of the interesting things with goals then, that at least for me, I can grab them out of nothing. And then I start identifying with them, and I might chase them a lot for no other reason than, I don't know, pride or identity. And at the moment, I feel passionately about Instagram. I really enjoy what I'm doing. So in a way, it feels easy to set the goal, post 365 videos, quotes, and valuable posts over a year right now. So maybe it should come with a caveat that, like, extra fine print that, and enjoy this. Like, if I don't enjoy it, then it's not worth doing it. And probably the enjoyment should come first. So my first goal is to keep loving producing content for Instagram, keep enjoying that process. And as long as that goal is filled, I could turn that into sub goals of posting these 365 posts of each category. And then hopefully that will bring the 400,000 followers.
Yeah. And when you describe it like this, I see a bit of a danger with setting a goal like that. Because I think especially creative endeavors comes so easy when inspiration is there, at least for me. If I'm recording a YouTube video, it could take 2 weeks to make a video if I'm not in flow. But if I feel inspiration, I could probably do that in a day. And I know that you are the same.
Yeah.
So let's say that you have this goal to post 3 posts every day on Instagram. And in 3 months' time, you get super excited to do you want to do a TV show.
Yeah.
I'm making that up now. And you feel so inspired to do that. And it's going to be so easy for you because you have the inspiration now. Ideas are just coming. But then it's like, oh no, I can't spend too much time on the TV show because I have set the goal of Instagram.
Yeah. Yeah, so I can totally see that especially when I set that long goals as 1 year, I have no idea how I'm going to feel about Instagram 3 months from now or 6 months from now. That I can really see that, okay, I stopped messing up what I actually want to do simply because I pulled this number of 400,000 out of thin air into nothing.
So what is the purpose of a goal then? Because what I want is outcome in the end and enjoy the process to get an outcome.
Yeah. So I believe a goal can be, I think it depends a lot about who you are and what kind of position you're in. And if you feel this is something I really want to do, I believe it's really good for me, and I find myself watching Netflix all the time instead of doing this, or I find myself getting drunk every weekend instead of doing this, if it's hard to stay away from the short-term decisions. Like, I read something quite recently about first, second, and third degree of consequences. I'm not sure if you and I spoke about this, but
No.
Basically, if you're eating a salad, your first consequence is the taste of salad, and you might not like it. But the second consequence is hopefully that you are feeling better that day than if you would have eaten chips. And the third grade of consequences is that you become a healthier person over time. And it's the opposite way if you're going to McDonald's. You probably really like that taste. So the first consequence is really pleasurable taste in your mouth and a very pleasurable feeling. Second consequence is that you have lower energy that day than if you would have eaten salad probably, or feeling heavier. And the third degree is that you might get liver disease or whatever instead of living a long, healthy life, kind of. And if you find yourself getting stuck making decisions for the first degree of consequences, let's say you enjoy watching Netflix instead of reading a book, I think goals can be a really good way of finding the discipline or motivation to do this. Let's say I want to read 20 books 2020 because I really feel that I want to get away from my current job or my situation, or I want to learn this topic, but I find myself watching Netflix instead. Then I believe a goal can be a really good thing to get there, because it's easy to see why this is good for us, and it's easy to see why binge watching Netflix and just getting caught up in those TV shows are not. However, if you were a person that loved to read and you would read either way, and you just set the goal, I'm going to read a lot of books about math, and then halfway through the year you don't want to read books about math anymore, you want to read about philosophy, but you promise yourself to read about math, maybe in that situation it doesn't make sense.
So goals become more and more useful the more you want to implement a habit that is not natural for you, that is difficult.
Yeah.
And it can be more and more in the way of your inspiration, the more it's something that you do naturally.
Yeah, I think that's
a very valuable way of looking at this. So to tie back what we talked about before, how can someone find enjoyment in postponing gratification?
Let's put a little pin in that one, because I like to get back to the goal about reading. Because now I feel at the same time, if we look at my training goal, that a better workout goal would be how can I love working out at the end of this year? Maybe that read 20 books in 2020 is a pretty shitty goal as well. Maybe a better goal would be how can I want to start loving to read in 2020. So maybe a better goal would be there, okay, I'm going to try 10 different kinds of books. I'm going to read them I'm going to read them at least for half an hour, whatever, to see, do I enjoy this topic? And make 2020 about, I want to start loving to read. And make 2021 about reading those 20 books then, or something like that. Which once again ties into what you said, postponing gratification. Is that the right word? Yeah, doesn't matter.
Gratification.
Yeah, so basically, maybe it's it's a tricky goal that we push ourselves instead of finding how can I love reading. Maybe the best way to start loving reading is I'm going to read a Donald Duck magazine every day, just to get into the habit of reading. And I think that's an important thing here, that goals can probably be good to change your behavior, but there are probably better goals to set that I'm going to do this, which I know that I really don't want to do. I need to push myself for it. Instead of finding the middle ground, I want to find a way of loving doing this.
Yeah, and especially I think if you're starting out with something new, like reading books, I would much rather set a goal something like for 3 hours every Thursday, then I will make space in my calendar so I have time to read, rather than saying I would read 20 books. Because then your experience of reading would be, how can I finish this book instead of how can I enjoy it?
I like that. So instead of saying I have to read in these hours, it's like I want to have space to read if I want to.
Yeah. So for example, I recently started a YouTube channel, and in the beginning I said I would post one video every week. And then I found myself, okay, I'm creating this video because I want to finish it, not because I want to enjoy the process. And I wanted this to be a passion project where I can have a creative outlet that I enjoy. So instead I said, no, that's a good way to ruin the fun here. Instead, I'm going to say, okay, I'm going to block off time in my calendar. So I have X amount of hours that I can spend on this passion project.
Yeah, I like that. And then if you want to do it that time, you can. And if you don't want to do it, you don't do it.
Exactly. And because then I go in to creating the videos with more of a creative mindset that, okay, if I want to play around in Premiere for 2 hours finding a cool transition, that's fine.
And Premiere is the software, right?
It's the software, right? And if I want to play around with a color filter for X hours, I do that. That's fine. If I want to take a silly long time to write a script about something I'm excited about, that's fine. I let it take time because I want to enjoy the process.
Yeah. So once again, if we take this back to the book analogy, it's like, okay, for 3 hours every week, I want to enjoy something that has to do with reading. It doesn't need finishing 20 books.
Bam. That felt, I got shivers in my body.
I like that. This reminds me of something that I learned about relationships, that if you want to improve your sex life, it's common that people go to the idea of, okay, every Saturday we should have a date and we should have sex, kind of, which is a really shitty way of improving your sex life. While a much better way is to, okay, every Saturday night we block 4 hours together, and if we want to have sex, we have sex, but at least we spend that time together and focusing on each other. And if that's going to the movies, having a dinner, cooking together, it doesn't really matter. But it's the same idea that, okay, our goal, if we want to put a goal into relationship here, could be every Saturday for 2020, we want to spend 4 hours together doing anything.
I really liked where this conversation is going, which is how to set goal to enjoy the process of what you're doing more.
Yeah.
And I think that is so key, because what is the goal of your whole life? I would invite every listener to ask that question.
Yeah, what is the goal with your life? And is there a goal with your life?
To me, the journey is the point. How can you enjoy that journey?
Yeah. I like the idea of having another episode when we talk about goals for a company then. We don't need to open that loop right now, but I just like the perspective, because that's going to be different, because then there are more people involved and might be different ways of thinking and goals might be more necessary. I don't know. I just like, I'm going to enjoy exploring that topic.
I would actually like to do more research. I would like to do research with you, actually, if you're up for it, before we do that episode.
Yeah, we'll see where we end up.
So I'm happy with starting to wrap up this episode now. But before I do, I would like to ask, what are some things that, maybe even not even call them goal, but what are some things you would like to accomplish and spend your time on, and what are you passionate about in 2020? Because we're starting a new year here.
I'm really looking forward to doing more social media stuff. I'm really looking forward to create content in finding ways that I enjoy to create content for YouTube and more for the podcast, and doing video content for the podcast, and a lot of things around creating content. To be honest, I think what I look forward the most to is building a system behind it that can scale the content production. I think I enjoy the systems more than anything else.
You called me a system guy.
I didn't say that I wasn't a system guy.
Why are we getting along?
No, I look forward for that. I don't have specific. I want to make great, at least breaking even next year, so we make money, and I don't need to think about that. But that's we're gonna have a goal episode about great. But that's a big personal goal of mine as well. And I want to get going with building a house, which is a big personal goal with a big sidetrack. I'm not sure. I want to enjoy life. I want to feel that next year is even better than this year. And this has been a great year. I want to feel very healthy, and I feel very healthy, but I like to keep on that trajectory, like that direction. I feel that my relationship with Johanna is better than ever, and I want to keep building on that. And I want to enjoy what we're doing. Yeah, I don't have that many goals. I want to keep living life as I do and keep enjoying it. Yeah. What do you want to do 2020? Is it similar?
It sounds like you are very happy now, and that you want to be just happier doing the same things moving forward. I feel like in a very similar way. I enjoy almost everything I do most of the time. I'm surrounded by things that gives me happiness and satisfaction, and I just want to keep adding more of myself into that and just keep enjoying what I do more and more and more. To be a little bit more specific, next year in Great, we're releasing a new podcast called The Great Share This Podcast. And in there, we are going to interview a lot of different shared organizations. So I'm going to be a professional, full-time podcast host in Great, which is so much fun because I'm going to be talking with a lot of interesting people running different passion projects that has the purpose to make the world better. So I'm really going to get an opportunity to up my game as a host, and I want to be even clearer, more expressive, and be more precise in the way that I ask questions. And outside of that, I'm also just recently launched my own YouTube channel. That is my passion project. And something that lights my soul on fire is to see especially other men that are having issues in relationships or health or communication and topics that I'm interested in, and being able to inspire and uplift them. So that is the purpose of that YouTube channel. And also I want to start taking on clients as a life coach. And that I think will really, really, really bring me a lot of joy next year. I've started doing it a little bit, and it's just fire inside me when I can interact with people in that way. So I'm so excited for 2020. I already know, unless something absurd happened, that it's going to be the best year of my life.
I'm excited to hear that.
I know it. Yeah.
One thing I'd like to touch upon there as well.
And you're moving to Sweden, so we're going to move more, be closer to each other.
Yeah, that's at least the plan. me and Johanna, we have this word. I think it comes from her family actually, or her family talking about us. They say that we're really good at ombestämma oss, which would translate, it's not a real word in Swedish either, but it would translate to remake up our mind, kind of. So we made up our mind, we basically made a decision, and then we made a re-decision. So we'll see. But yeah, the plan is definitely to move to Sweden, and I'm excited about that. I'm excited to hang out with you. I'm excited to be part of that journey. And I'd like to touch on one thing before we wrap this up. So we landed on goals can be good, and probably goals are better than no goals in a lot of ways for a lot of people. But I think if you're setting goals, then some things are important to keep in mind here. I think a good way is to set the goal asking yourself, how can I enjoy this by the end of the process, rather than how can I reach this goal? So rather, how can I find a way to love working out, rather than how can I work out 365 days in a row? And I spoke to a woman a couple of days back who wanted to increase the revenues of her company. It's like, okay, I've set this goal that I want to reach $1 million in revenues or whatever it was. And it's the same thing here that we touched upon. I want to reach 400,000 followers. I can't really impact the number of followers. There is a lot of external factors, and she can't really impact the numbers of revenues because there can happen a lot of things. She was running a restaurant, and for example, let's say they start building something right after outside of a restaurant. She can't impact that. So she can't control this goal. And then I think it's much better to break this down in goals that you can have an impact on. That's why I said I want to make 365 videos or 365 posts like this, because that's in my control. The number of followers necessarily isn't in my control. So if you're setting goals, start by asking yourself, how can I enjoy this process and how can I set a goal that I enjoy? And then set the goals that you can actually reach. So if your goal is to love to start reading, for example, in 1 year, that's going to be a tricky goal to reach because you can't really say, I'm going to love reading. But if you do what Emil touched upon, set aside 3 hours every week, for example, to practice loving reading, to test different things, then that's a goal you can actually reach. So if there's been a year and you have spent 3 hours every week practicing to love reading, you have reached your goal. And hopefully the effect of that will be that you have started to love reading. But the goal in itself was something that you actually could control, setting aside 3 hours every week. That's completely in your power. But whether or not you're going to love something at the end of that time, you can't actually control. Does this make sense?
Yeah, I think that summarized it very well.
Yeah. So the same thing then goes for this woman who wanted to increase her revenues. If she sets the goal of, I'm going to call 30 different companies trying to get them to do a sponsorship. She wanted to do catering for companies. She wanted to start doing that. So if she set the goal of every week, I want to call 30 companies, that's a goal she can completely control. But she can't control whether or not they will buy this much or do this. And maybe she can set the goal, I'm going to call 30 companies each week and I'm going to spend 1 hour each week reflecting on how did those calls go, what could I have done better. That's a goal that is completely in her power. And hopefully calling 30 companies every week for 1 year will help her to improve the revenues to $1 million. But she can actually say, I managed to do what I set out to do, and knowing where she did or didn't do that. And hopefully she can set the goal, I want to find a way of enjoying calling these companies as well. And I want to find joy in that. I want to do this together with someone who wants to do that and have the joy element in there to make it easy. But either way, even if she don't enjoy this, because maybe she has to increase the revenues because otherwise she goes bankrupt or whatever, there are situations where joy isn't the most important factor. But at least that will be a goal that is fully in her control rather than just increasing the revenues.
That was crystal clear.
Oh.
So what can someone do if they want to support our cause and what we're doing here?
So we have a goal. No, we don't actually have a goal about that, but we want to reach more and more people with this podcast. And this podcast is, as Emil said in introduction, for people who want to make the world a better place through entrepreneurship. We want to build a community around that purpose because we believe that that's a way to improve the world. And to support our cause, if you start subscribing to our podcast in whatever podcast app that you're using, you greatly increase our chances of getting into these different top lists. Because I used to think that the top lists were about the most people listening to the podcast, but it's actually about which podcasts have the highest percent of subscribers. And we could be a podcast with the highest number of subscribers. We cannot compete with Joe Rogan on highest numbers of listeners, but we can be a podcast with highest number of subscribers. So please, I just wanted to do that. Click subscribe on this podcast on the Becoming Great, and we will love doing more episodes.
We do. And we wish you joyful goals in 2020.
Yeah, joyful goals. A joyful life. Thank you for listening and Happy New Year.
See you next week.
See you.